There is a painful shift happening to love, and most people pretend they don't notice because noticing would mean admitting they're part of it. You don't even get to finish your own happiness. Before the feeling fully lands in your body, you're already comparing it, testing it, auditing it against someone else's highlight reel, and calling that romance. Social media didn't just add entertainment to dating, it rewired the rules of what love is supposed to look like. It turned private affection into a public performance. It made value feel measurable, like something you can earn with displays and lose if you don't keep up. If you're watching this and thinking, yes, that's exactly what I've been doing without realizing it, good. That means you're not totally asleep. But wake up fast, because the virtual princess fantasy is not cute. It is a slow psychological extraction. From men, it extracts money and identity. From women, it extracts self-worth and discernment. And from both, it extracts the ability to love without bargaining. Here's what this video will expose: how the internet created a relationship standard that is impossible to satisfy. How pure love got replaced by a game where the winner is the one who performs best on camera. How people stopped asking, "Do we fit?" and started asking, "How does this look?" Why your nervous system feels addicted to approval, and why the people who seem most romantic online often become the most destructive partners in real life. I'm going to be direct. The tragedy of virtual princes and virtual princesses is not that they exist. The tragedy is that we started training ourselves to want them. We started confusing intensity with intimacy. We started confusing spending with character. And then we acted shocked when the relationship started to feel like a transaction. Let's start with the first lie that kills love: that you need to keep proving you're worthy, and that proving is the same thing as being loved. When people talk about showing love, they usually mean something sweet, a small gift, a message, a gesture. But social media has stretched that into something else: compliance with a scorecard. It's no longer "I care about you." It becomes "I must look like the kind of person you would choose, publicly, under pressure, in front of witnesses who don't even live your life." Picture a real day. A man brings home flowers because he genuinely wants to. He's happy, he's present, he's thinking about her smile. And then the moment he hands them over, her face pauses for half a second, like a screen buffering. Not because she's ungrateful, because she is trained to evaluate the gift like a deliverable. Does it match the season? Does it match the aesthetic? Will someone see it? Will someone comment? Will it signal status? He might notice it, he might not. Either way, something shifts. He starts paying attention not to her feelings, but to her feedback system. Her satisfaction becomes conditional. And his love starts learning the fastest path to reduce discomfort: spend more, perform harder, over-deliver. Then the loop tightens. He isn't proving devotion anymore. He's proving survival in a relationship where love behaves like a customer service ticket. If the service level drops, he fears rejection. And fear is the opposite of intimacy. Fear makes you calculate. Fear makes you act. Fear makes you say yes when you mean no. And when you keep saying yes to keep peace, you slowly lose yourself. You become a polite puppet. This is the first psychological mechanism most people refuse to name. The relationship stops being mutual and becomes regulated. It becomes a system of rewards and punishments. The reward is attention. The punishment is silence, disappointment, or subtle withdrawal. People tell themselves it's romance because they want to believe love is supposed to hurt like this. But what it actually resembles is behavior training. On the internet, that training looks glamorous. Online, submissive devotion gets rewarded with praise. A man kneels in rain or sets up an emotional set piece, and people in the comments call it destiny. But in real life, a man who kneels all the time doesn't become more attractive. He becomes more replaceable, and not because he's weak in a moral sense, because the nervous system of the other person learns a pattern. It learns that his worth is tied to obedience. There's a specific kind of danger in this. When someone has to beg for basic consideration, their partner unconsciously starts to feel above them. Not necessarily in a conscious, cruel way. It's more like a shift in the power map. The person receiving devotion stops feeling safe to respect boundaries. If the relationship is built on performance, the other person doesn't develop admiration for character. They develop entitlement for output. A healthy dynamic is not a mother-child fantasy. It's two adults building a life together. But social media spreads an alternative template, and then the template gets mistaken for love. The template says if he provides and tolerates disrespect, she will be satisfied. The template says humiliation is romance. The template says asking for less is betrayal. The template says you either win her approval with spectacle or you lose and become invisible. And when this template takes over, testosterone and attraction don't magically disappear because of some science quote. They disappear because the role is wrong. Attraction is tied to agency. It's tied to the feeling that the other person has a self and a direction. When a man becomes a role player for a partner's ego, the partner starts sensing the lack of direction. Even if the man is kind, even if he is generous, even if he is loyal, the vibe becomes small. It becomes someone trying to buy belonging instead of someone offering partnership. Now bring in a second mechanism, the comparison disease. Most people think comparison is just insecurity. It's not. It's a cognitive weapon pointed at your own self-esteem. Comparison doesn't happen only because you're jealous. It happens because you're being fed constant evidence that your life is not enough. You scroll for 5 minutes and your brain receives 10,000 proofs that other couples are better dressed, richer, more poetic, more photogenic. Someone announces a trip, someone posts a surprise proposal, someone's gifts look cinematic, and without you choosing it, your mind starts building an invisible courtroom. Why is their love louder than mine? Why are they getting more? Why am I not delivering enough? This is why the love you're supposed to experience becomes a performance exam. Your partner might not even ask for anything. Your phone asks for it. The algorithm asks for it. Your own brain asks for it. You start treating affection like it needs to pass a public test. Here's a micro story that happens more than people admit. A woman receives a gift for the first anniversary. It's thoughtful. It's not expensive. He chose it based on her preferences. She smiles. Then she checks her feed. She sees someone else's anniversary setup. Perfect lighting, matching outfits, a curated cake, a surprise that looks like it was planned by a film crew. She feels a flash of shame as if she should have demanded the same production value. She tells herself she's romantic. She tells herself she has standards. But what she's actually doing is outsourcing self-worth to external validation. Her mind is saying, I am only valuable if I look valuable. And that logic doesn't stop at gifts. It expands. It becomes height requirements, income fantasies, lifestyle thresholds, and the belief that your partner must function like a brand ambassador. In other words, social media created virtual princess expectations, not because women are evil, but because the content economy trains people to confuse fantasy with feasibility. Let's talk about the content economy directly. It doesn't sell love, it sells the feeling of love. It sells the rush of dopamine that comes from being seen, from seeing others being seen, and from believing that a specific package equals a specific outcome. Dopamine doesn't care about your values. It responds to novelty and reward signals. When a post receives attention, your brain learns this is what matters. The more curated the post, the more intense the reward. So people start chasing posts in real life, not because they want to be happy, because they want to feel the chemical comfort of being approved. And approvals are addictive. Once you get a taste of being praised for your perfect relationship, you can't go back to quiet. Quiet doesn't deliver dopamine. Quiet doesn't generate comments. Quiet doesn't trend. That brings us to the third lie, that material rituals prove love. When people say love is shown through seasonal rituals, they make it sound innocent. It's just a tradition. It's just a nice date. It's just a gift on the right day. But the deeper truth is harsher. Rituals become contracts when the other person treats them like evidence. Evidence of what? Evidence that you are loyal enough. Evidence that you are rich enough. Evidence that you are worthy of being displayed. Evidence that you can compete. Competition is the poison. When love turns into a competition, it stops being about mutual care and becomes about status. And status is not stable. Status demands escalation. If one gift is not enough, you need a bigger one. If one post is not enough, you need another moment that gets attention. If one date is not photogenic, you need a better date. So couples start living for the camera. They start manufacturing memories that feel less authentic every time they repeat the formula. They start rehearsing emotions. They start editing their behavior. And eventually, the relationship becomes a treadmill. You don't walk toward each other. You run in place to keep up with a fantasy that no one can actually satisfy. In psychology, there's a concept people experience without knowing the name: intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling sticky. Sometimes the reward arrives, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes your partner reacts with appreciation. Sometimes they react with disappointment. That unpredictability keeps you trying harder even when you don't feel respected. Social media creates intermittent reinforcement at a mass scale. People feel rewarded when they perform. They feel ashamed when they don't. Then they scroll for solutions. Then they try again. Then they lose themselves even more. Now, you might be thinking, but surely there are people who just enjoy the aesthetics and still have healthy relationships. Yes, a few do. But the system trains most people into the default. The default is the algorithm's logic. Maximize engagement, not human well-being. This is why money gets pulled into romance in a distorted way. It's not simply that people spend more, it's that spending becomes a language replacing emotional connection. When connection is uncertain, people use money as control. Money feels measurable, money feels safe, money feels like a lever. So a man learns to ask, what can I buy that will prevent conflict? A woman learns to ask, what can I demand that will protect my status? They both stop asking the harder questions. Do we actually like each other? Do we respect each other? Do we share values under stress? Instead, they ask for receipts. They ask for gestures that signal superiority. They ask for proof that reduces anxiety. And the most ironic part is that the proof doesn't create safety. It creates more anxiety because it raises the bar and expands the need. Now we arrive at a fourth lie, that the virtual version of your partner is superior to the real one. Social media doesn't just show you gifts and dates, it shows you options. And options create a specific kind of mindset. When you believe there are unlimited choices, you stop negotiating with reality. You start hunting for an upgraded model. This mindset spreads in both directions. Women see a feed full of handsome, rich, romantic men. Men see a feed full of beautiful women who seem effortless, affectionate, and constantly rewarded. The feed becomes a marketplace, even if nobody says that word out loud. But marketplaces destroy loyalty because loyalty is based on commitment to a particular person, not a search for the best signal. Here is how this destroys love in practice. A couple fights. They're tired, they're human, they need repair, but instead of working through it, one person goes to the internet. They scroll, they seek relief, they seek fantasy, they start noticing flaws in their real partner more sharply because the feed offers perfection. This creates a mental pattern called upward comparison. You don't compare yourself to people who are comparable in your life. You compare yourself to curated extremes. Then you treat those extremes as reality. You start thinking your partner is lacking when actually your standards were inflated by editing, staging, and selective posting. And the most brutal outcome is self-betrayal. People don't leave immediately. They rationalize. They try to fix the mismatch by pushing their partner to meet the fantasy. They request more gifts, more attention, more displays, more reassurance, more submission, more excitement. Soon the relationship is no longer a home. It becomes a stage. And a stage is a place where real needs are ignored. If you want a clearer picture, imagine a woman sitting across from a man who is genuinely interested in her mind and her life. He asks thoughtful questions. He listens. He makes her feel calm. He doesn't need to announce it online. He shows up consistently. Then she goes online and sees a trend where a man serves his girlfriend like a performer, bringing overpriced beverages and staging dramatic affection. The comments inflate the idea that devotion must look humiliating to be real. She starts doubting the calm man. She starts feeling bored by the authentic, because authenticity doesn't chase attention. So she asks him to change. She asks him to be louder. She asks him to be more expensive. She asks him to adopt a role that she thinks equals love. He does it at first because he wants to keep her. Then he begins to resent it. Then he begins to withdraw emotionally. Then she interprets withdrawal as lack of love, and the cycle becomes self-reinforcing. This is why people feel trapped. They think they're trapped by the partner. They're not. They're trapped by the system inside their own head, reinforced by the feed. Let's go deeper and talk about identity. The hidden self doesn't just want love. It wants to feel real. It wants to feel chosen without having to audition. But social media has trained people to treat identity like content, something to optimize, polish, and market. So men start optimizing their masculinity for approval, not for themselves, for her audience, for the comments, for the validation signal. Women start optimizing their femininity for desirability, not for connection, for status, for the feeling of being selected by the highest value category in the feed. The moment you start optimizing yourself for an audience, you become allergic to honest connection. Honesty is messy. Honesty doesn't always look good. Honesty doesn't always produce instant compliments. The relationship becomes risky because it threatens the image. And then, when real life conflict appears, it feels like betrayal. Because the image cannot handle complexity, so people either escalate performance or they escape. They ghost, they sabotage, they fall out of love. But often, love didn't die. The performance died, the image died, the fantasy died, and rather than mourn it, people blame the other person. Now I want to address something uncomfortable. Many people use the virtual princess concept as an excuse. They point at women online and say it's their fault, or they point at men online and say it's their fault. No. The real truth is that both are victims of the same algorithmic belief system. The belief system says love is a product you can buy and consume. It says romance is a subscription service. It says desire is something you can trigger on command. But love is not a transaction. Love is mutual investment in character, growth, and shared reality. When you treat love as a purchase, you train yourself to expect ongoing payment. That's why pure love dies under bright screens. Because pure love requires time without applause. It requires choosing each other without needing the world's scoreboard. It requires patience and repair, not only fireworks. Fireworks are easy. Work is hard. Another uncomfortable layer is exploitation of weakness. When a man consistently humiliates himself for approval, he teaches himself that self-respect can be bartered away. When a woman consistently demands more displays for status, she teaches herself that receiving is more important than building. The relationship becomes transactional in both directions. One side feels like a servant, the other side feels like an evaluator, and eventually, both lose tenderness because tenderness cannot grow in fear or superiority. Let's talk about the dopamine addiction again, but in a more personal way. Suppose you're dating someone. You're not stupid. You know when things are wrong, but you keep tolerating it because the good moments hit like a drug. She posts a photo, and you feel proud. He surprises you, and you feel special. The rest of the time, there is tension. This creates a brain pattern where the good moments become the anchor for hope, and the bad moments become background noise. You start believing that intensity equals destiny. But intensity can be manipulation too. Intensity can be a cycle, not a bond. So the call to action is not only about social media content, the call to action is about reclaiming your perception. You have to stop letting the feed define your normal. Here's what you do when you reclaim perception. You ask questions that don't fit into a caption. You ask how someone behaves when they are not trying to impress strangers. You ask what kind of conflict resolution they have. You ask whether they keep promises when no one is watching. You watch for character, not for aesthetics. You watch for emotional maturity. Not for chemistry that comes from engineered scenes. You watch for effort that is consistent, not dramatic. Because a healthy partner does not only show love when it will be rewarded online. A healthy partner can love when it will not be applauded. This is also where you break the consumer trap. Many rituals are not romantic. They're marketing dressed as intimacy. Brands and creators thrive on the idea that love requires specific purchases at specific times. It turns ordinary days into events, and it turns couples into customers. If you want a real example, think about how a simple drink becomes a relationship test. Someone sells a seasonal cup as if it is proof of devotion. A man feels pressured to deliver the item on time. If he doesn't, he fears he will be judged as careless or cheap. The woman feels pressured to react in a way that validates her own social image. So both become trapped in a script. But the most important question disappears. Did he actually care about your day? Or did he care about passing a consumer ritual? If you can't tell the difference anymore, your relationship has already been hijacked. And hijacked relationships are hard to fix because the brain becomes accustomed to noise. Quiet love feels boring at first. Honest love feels underwhelming after years of scrolling. You might even interpret calm as lack. That's a training effect. Your nervous system learned to wait for shocks. So your job is to retrain your nervous system back toward reality, not toward mediocrity, toward honesty. There is a difference. Now, I'm going to say something that will make some people angry. The people most obsessed with looking loved are often the least capable of sustaining love. Not because they are inherently bad, because their love style is built on external validation. External validation is unstable. It depends on other people's attention. Attention is unreliable. One day it's there, another day it's gone. Then the anxious person panics and tries to regain the feeling through more performance, more spending, more demands. That's how relationships become cages. People start bargaining for affection, they start negotiating their own dignity, they start shrinking, and eventually they resent each other because both sides feel used. So here's the darkest, honest takeaway. Social media didn't just change how people date, it changed what people believe they deserve. It taught many people to confuse attention with love, and it taught many people to confuse humiliation with romance. And when you accept that confusion, you train yourself to ignore the real warning signs. You ignore disrespect because it comes with gifts. You ignore emotional neglect because it comes with photos. You ignore incompatibility because it comes with chemistry visuals. Then you wake up months or years later wondering why you feel exhausted in your own relationship, wondering why your stomach turns before messages, wondering why you feel alone even when you're with someone. You weren't alone, you were performing, you were managing. You are trying to keep a standard alive that no human can meet because it's designed by algorithms, not built by hearts. So what does rising look like here? It looks like refusing the performance contract. For men, rising looks like getting your frame back, not arrogance, a stable sense of self, a willingness to say no to demands that violate your dignity, a commitment to build value in your life instead of buying silence. You stop chasing being enough and start becoming enough through action, discipline, and character. You stop using money as emotional anesthesia. You start using truth as a foundation. For women, rising looks like waking up from the fantasy that love is a service you receive when you perform correctly. You stop training yourself to measure value by spectacle. You measure it by integrity. You stop demanding humiliating submission and call it romance. You insist on partnership where both people grow. If you want a practical rule, here it is. If your relationship requires constant evidence to prove it's real, it's not real enough yet to be safe. Healthy love doesn't demand constant documentation. Another rule: if the peace in your relationship depends on guessing what will go viral, you are not in love. You are in a feedback loop built to drain you. So turn off the feed sometimes. Not forever, not as a monk, just long enough for your mind to remember what it feels like to be loved without an audience. Go on dates that don't end in uploads. Have conversations that don't end with post-worthy moments. Spend time with someone that makes you feel calm and respected even if it never trends. And then, watch yourself. Notice how your body reacts when romance becomes quiet. If you feel discomfort, that's not proof you're in the wrong relationship. It's proof you've been trained to need dopamine, not connection. Yes, you might have to mourn a fantasy. You might have to accept that the perfect lover in your feed doesn't exist, or if they exist, they're not available in the way your imagination requires. That grief is necessary. Without it, you'll keep chasing props, and you'll keep losing real chances at happiness. Finally, I want to aim this at both genders with one message. Choose the person who can meet you in real life, not the person who can impress you in a highlight reel. Choose the partner who is stable when attention is absent. Choose the person who builds, not the person who performs. Because the biggest tragedy of virtual love is that it makes people treat each other like content. It trains you to worship the moment and ignore the future. It trains you to chase stimulation and neglect compatibility. And it trains you to believe that love is something you earn through display, instead of something you build through mutual respect. So here's your call to action. Today, audit your standards. Ask yourself which parts of your type were shaped by the feed instead of your lived experience. Ask yourself how many times you changed your behavior to avoid being judged online. Ask yourself if your partner is meeting your needs as a person or meeting your anxiety as an audience. Then make one honest decision. Either renegotiate your relationship with real boundaries or end the performance. There is no third option where you stay the same and somehow feel fulfilled. If you stay in the loop, you will keep paying with your dignity, your money, your time, and your heart. Life has no like button, like it or not. Tomorrow will come without filters, and only real character will protect you in storms, not cinematic generosity, not seasonal rituals, not curated devotion. Be a real person, love a real person, and don't let an algorithm decide what your heart should want.